Okay, namaste to everybody. This is a very traditional Indian way of greeting. We don't shake hands and we do namaste from a distance. So, you don't really have any, chance of contamination and stuff like that. You avoid all physical contact. But, India also has another tradition of yoga. And yoga is not about just, these very difficult exercises that you end up doing in the morning, huffing and puffing. But it's also about, the attainment of spiritual quest, as they would say. So basically, yoga talks about the human body being comprised, just think of it as an onion peel. I mean, as an onion. You have many layers of your body and your whole body put together. What you see is essentially an outer peel, which is the gross body, which is, the stuff made of muscle and bone. And when you go deeper inside, you would find the next layer is called the pranamaya kosha. The first layer is called the annamaya kosha. Anna in Sanskrit is basically food, is basically grain, food. Prana is not prawns. It's prana is life force. It's like basically energy. So just to give you a metaphor, if there's a person who's lying dead, a corpse, and then there's a person in comatose, what's the difference? The difference is that the second person who's in comatose has life force in them, and the person who's a corpse doesn't have it. The next layer is the layer called manomaya kosha. Manomaya kosha is mano in Sanskrit means the mind. And the mind is essentially comprises of our thoughts and feelings. And these thoughts and feelings, basically come from the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the unconscious mind. And the conscious mind is what helps you connect with the outside world. The subconscious mind is basically all your experiences, where you store all your experiences of the past. And the unconscious mind is essentially your inner self or your Atman. And this inner self and the Atman, to a large extent, drives what you do with your outer self. Now, then you come to a thing called the Vijnanamaya kosha. That is the fourth level of your human, your whole existence, your personal existence. And this is, it's getting inner and inner, if you can see. So this is the fourth peel, as you would call it. The Vijnanamaya kosha is basically the intellect, and the intellect and the ego. And this actually helps you basically to kind of get to your higher mind. The higher mind is your true self, your inner self. And then finally, it's the inside is what you call the Anandamaya kosha. It's the bliss, a state of bliss or the state of happiness. And this happiness actually, if you look at the Eastern philosophy, has got a lot to do with gratitude. It's got a lot to do with, how you deal with your environment, with your nature. And ultimately, it says acceptance. So just to bring back what Thomas was talking about, that, you accept everything. There's nothing, you don't get attached to anything. You don't get detached from anything. You have to you have to accept everything. And when you start accepting everything, then you start seeing that you and nature are as one and the same. Now, if you look at how this whole, why am I presenting all this? I mean, I'm not here to do a Sunday morning spiritual talk. I'm not a yogist or I'm not a yoga teacher. I'm not a guru. I'm doing all this basically to try to tell you that, what behavior change we try to drive in the sanitation campaigns across the world, perhaps, they don't take into cognizance the real, things that you need to change that needs to drive sustainable behavior change. And what that means is that most of our communication is worked at the level of level 3 and 4. That's the Manomaya kosha and the Vijnanamaya kosha. But really you need to work at all levels of the body. Excuse me. So just to explain to you in a way of a metaphor, what is the difference between the mind and the intellect? Okay, what do you see here? I mean, I'm just going to ask this randomly to Vishwanath, since I know your name. What do you see? A brick wall. A concrete wall, or do you see anything else? Anybody else? Stefan?
Some white stuff in the brick wall there.
Anybody else sees anything different? Black stone between bricks. Okay, for the sake of for brevity, I will kind of move to the next slide, although I can spend a lot of time on this. Do you see this? Nobody saw this. Oh, good. So this is the first time you're seeing this optical thing. Anyway, this is what we call optical illusion, right? And what you see now is a cigar which is stuck in the mall. And now I'm going to bring you back to the original slide. Do you see what you saw earlier? Do you see what you saw earlier? It's very unlikely that you see what you saw earlier. You would have now, by now you would see only the cigar. You can't see what you saw earlier. And that's what it is. I mean, basically, once what you saw first was your mind seeing it. It was the thoughts and feelings in your mind. The moment the intellect got into it and you saw what it was, when I told you what it was, now you cannot go back to the mind again. It's your intellect which drives the whole thing. So sustainability essentially comes out of sustainable behavior change can only be driven if you actually get down to the intellect and to the Atman. And many of our ancient Eastern philosophies, including Buddhism, Jainism, they all talk about this. They all say that, we can actually experience bliss, and we'll experience bliss when we actually think of the overall good of everybody around us, including nature. And the only way, and if you do that, and I'm going back to the first slide, if you do that, you look at this onion peel. If you make a small change in the center or in the first circle, then you can imagine, then when you expand it, it goes as an arc, then the change that you make on your body level or on your behavior level becomes much bigger. A small change in your soul can actually make a big change in your behavior. That was the essence of my discussion, and I thought I'll share those a few slides with you. Thank you very much.